Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. Joining me today are my guys, Tyler and Alex. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you get Tyler's joke. Tyler, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing very well. If you don't get my joke, it's totally fine. We just can't be friends. We got some news all of a sudden this morning that makes us a little bit more worried about the game tomorrow. I'm sure we'll talk about that. How are you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing good, man. Utah played last night against Stanford. It was a wonderful night. The game started at 7:45 after saying that it was supposed to start at 7 because TV networks have no idea how to schedule college football games these days. It's really driving me nuts. But, you know, Utah, it is what it is. Lots of people want my guy Devin Lloyd to be drafted by Alex's future team, the Philadelphia Eagles, or not future team, other team, I should say.
Well, they're my future team. I don't recognize them next week. Until next week. They are my future team.
Fair enough. So it was a good night. You know, had another college and careers event at work, so it was fun. Alex, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Pac-12 games starting at 10:45 on the East Coast is why I don't watch any Pac-12 football except when Oregon plays at noon. That's the only time I watch them.
It's ridiculous. They have a new commissioner, so they have this year and next year with the old TV deals, and we all cannot wait for this new commissioner to mix things up because it's ridiculous. And 7:45 Pacific time on a Friday night. It's wonderful. Anyways, this is a Chargers podcast. We'll get back to the Chargers, and we have some news to talk about, as Tyler mentioned, which is not really great. Tavon Campbell has been added to the injury report today. He's apparently dealing with a groin injury and is now questionable in a corresponding move. The Chargers have elevated Maurice French, as you can see by Tyler's name, and Keandre Thomas from the practice squad. So a little surprised they didn't also activate Ben DeLuca at this point, especially with Tavon Campbell's injury. Tyler, what do you make of Campbell being added to the injury report this late?
I mean, was he like they're doing a new ping pong tournament and someone hit him in the eye with the ball? Like, what happened? Because I mean, we've seen Kenneth Murray get hurt on a Friday and then reported on a Friday, but for this to show up on a Saturday morning, I have no idea what happened, but it is very, very troubling. I felt okay with Campbell out there as your sort of CB1 with Harris Jr. as CB2. I can live with that for a game against the Eagles. But if Campbell can't go, and he is questionable, so maybe he can, but if he can't go and Keandre Thomas is out there with Ryan Smith, Chris Harris, I feel a lot worse about the game. My biggest question, though, is why was French activated? What does he bring?
I assume French is activated for special teams and specifically like gunner help, because Ryan Smith and Keemon Hall are going to be playing heavy snaps in this one. So I assume French is going to be the gunner this week.
Maybe the special teams get better. Maybe it's a good special teams move, right, Alex?
Yeah, maybe it's a good special teams move and not a complete disaster. This is there's no way to spin it. This is pretty bad, especially because they have to go against a pretty decent receiver core. Like, I know we went on the whole Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to the left side of the field thing, but might not matter if he throws to the left. he might on this one if Chris Harris is covering Devonta Smith. I mean, that's pretty nasty. As far as activating French, like, I think that's fine. Activate him for special teams. But I'm not going to change my game pick. But like, this is one of those things where I could see Jalen Hurts just toasting the Chargers secondary because there is no secondary there right now outside of Derwin James. Like, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm not changing the pick either. I'll probably give the Eagles like 3 more points. Like, just change it to a touchdown victory instead of 10 points. I think that's fair. But the Chargers have 4 corners in this game, and Chris Harris is like the only one that's played like an extended amount of minutes recently. Like, Tavon Campbell, for the most part, has been a backup. I mean, Keemon Hall has been a special teams guy. Ryan Smith, I think he only played like extensive minutes for the Buccaneers like 1 season, and it wasn't exactly pretty. Although I thought he played okay on Sunday against the Patriots. So this is bad, right? And like, if anything happens during the game, then you're down to 3 corners, and that really limits like your kind of versatility that you can do. And so, you know, I said yesterday on Twitter, like we probably wouldn't see them use Derwin or Nasir Adderley at cornerback that much. They might not have a choice. Like they might have to. And Alohi Gilman might also be inactive in this one. So we might see, you know, Mark Webb and Ben DeLuca get activated tomorrow, and they're like the starting deep safeties. Like this is a bad spot for the defense. I still think, you know, there's a ton of help built into Brandon Staley's scheme, which is good. You know, they're not exactly playing, you know, they're not like the Ravens, you know, playing cover 0 all the time. So there is a lot of concern, but it's not like completely panic button in the secondary, because I think Brandon Staley's scheme will help kind of compensate. You still have Adderley, you still have Derwin James, but not having any healthy corners in this one is definitely big for this defense. And I don't know, maybe this kind of dares the Eagles to pass as opposed to run, which could also be a good or a bad thing, depending on what your perspective is there. But Campbell being on the injury report at this point is definitely not ideal.
It's not complete panic button for me if they don't allow Boston Scott to get 5 yards at will. If they start allowing him to do that and start allowing Jordan Howard and all those other backs to go off, then that secondary becomes a problem.
Yeah, I've heard that the Eagles tend to go pass, or run, and really that's it for a game. There's no good mix or balance, and I know Eagles fans are frustrated with the coaching staff, so they went run last game, so this would be a pretty good game for them to go pass.
I mean, there's no good mix or balance to our offense right now either, so it's, you know, battle of the ineptitude.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but, you know, I understand the frustrations. Yeah, defensively, like I think this really is a one where you probably just stay in base and just deal with, you know, the stuff that you're, you know, you have Kaiser White and Drew Tranquil who are good against pass coverage. You probably expand their roles a little bit. But, you know, when you have 4 corners, that really limits the rotation. Like Chris Harris is probably going to have to play 100% of snaps, as is Ryan Smith. Like this is bad.
Well, fortunately, we talked about Easton Stick's value as a scout team quarterback. Maybe they could bring him in as a safety as well. So he's got some double duty this week.
Oh, God. That's not fun.
Yeah, hey, Dontrell Inman can do it for a game. Maybe Easton Stick can.
Can we sign Dontrell Inman to play corner? Maybe he can help us.
Can we just sign John Brannon
at this point?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think the thing that really concerns me, particularly if Tavon Campbell is out, is speed, because Quez Watkins runs a 4.3, and you also have Jalen Rader as a 4.4 kind of guy. Like, so not that the Eagles again have been able to stretch the field super successfully vertically or anything, but all of those guys down, plus you probably have Derwin doing Goddard duty since Michael Davis is out. So yeah, like I just don't know what their functionality is going to be in terms of like covering all those guys, and that concerns me since they don't have anyone that's fast in the secondary anymore. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Well, I know Ryan Smith is fast. I don't think he's Michael Davis and Tavon Campbell fast, but I want to say he's like a 4.4 guy.
Yeah. Let's bank on that.
Yeah, Keemon Hall is a 4.5 guy. So I mean, he's a slot corner. Like that's not wild.
What about Derwin James just playing full-time corner against Devonta Smith?
I'll take that over every other option we have right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but then if you put Derwin James as a full-time corner, you're screwed with Dallas Goedert. So like, there's really no way to win here.
So Ryan Smith ran a 4.45 and a 4.47 at the combine. So again, he's not 4.3 Michael Davis or 4.3 Tavon Campbell, but he's faster than the other, at least. But yeah, as Ryan points out in the chat, like this is a game where your defensive line, like you desperately need a good pass rush performance from this team. You know, Joey Bosa, understandably, has not been super productive the last few weeks. He's getting double teamed and triple teamed and chipped. But, you know, we've been kind of waiting for Uchenna and Nwosu to have, like, I think he's played okay. Like, I don't think he's been bad. There's been a lot of hate for Uchenna and Nwosu this season, but I think he's been solid. We need him to be, like, best game of his career tomorrow, because the best way to make things easier on your secondary that's banged up is have a good pass rush and get after Jalen Hurts. So I mentioned on our episode on Thursday, I was interested to see Brandon Staley's game plan because I kind of assumed, in this one we'd see them employ a similar plan as they did Mahomes and cage rush and keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket. But at this point, like, I don't think you can do that. I think you have to get after Jalen Hurts, blitz him more. That could be another thing with Drew Tranquil, Kaiser White, who have been good blitzers. But you need a great day from your pass rush. Jerry Tillery needs more than 2 good reps this one. Justin Jones, he played really well last week, and that needs to continue. Linval Joseph has had some really good moments as a pass rusher. Like, this is a put up or shut up game for the defensive line too.
The offensive line's pretty good, though, yeah? The outside of Landon Dickerson's give up, I think, 19. The offensive line's been pretty solid, yeah? It's not like this is a cakewalk line, is what I'm saying.
Right. Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey. I mean, like, I don't think they're going to necessarily roll over in this one.
Yeah, the good thing is that I from what I saw, in the limited film that I watched this week on the Eagles, they don't do a lot of chipping and double teaming. I think you have Lane Johnson, who's arguably the best right tackle in the game, and you have Jordan Mailata, who's very solid at left tackle. So I'm hoping we see a little bit more one-on-ones in this one for Joey Bosa, just because the Eagles have better personnel. Like, I assume that they would trust on an island against Joey Bosa. So I don't know, but this is definitely not a cakewalk. The Eagles are very, very good up front on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
And even without Jordan Brooks, Landon Dickerson is the weak link, but I mean, we all really, really like Landon Dickerson in the draft. Like, he's got a very high ceiling as a player. So the offensive line is solid, and the defensive line is in for a big test. But like, they don't have a choice. Like, you have to perform this week against the Eagles and get after Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, big put up or shut up game. Roy Liggett, I see your super chat. Thank you very much for that. If you wanted to ask a question, have at it. Oops, I put up the wrong one. Or is that you? Did I do that, or did you do that?
I didn't put that up.
Oh, whoops. No, sorry, Alex. Didn't mean to put that up for you. Thank you, Roy, for your super chat.
I assume
Alex is not a Debbie Downer. He's realist.
Yeah. Thomas Martinez points out that Nas ran like a 4.4. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. I think Derwin James ran like a 4.4 too. It's just the lack of speed at specifically corner. Like, Chris Harris is going to be matched up with Quez Watkins, like Alex is saying, probably a good amount on the outside. And Devontae Smith is fast as well. So I've been very, very critical of Chris Harris recently. I wish that they were not in this situation with the lack of corners. But like, this is why you pay Chris Harris. Like, this is a game where Chris Harris needs to earn that paycheck.
Yeah.
And do you feel like some of his struggles? I'll go for it, Alex.
No, I was just say re-earn the nickname Strap again.
Yeah.
Steven, do you think that part of Chris Harris' issues so far, other than the injury, is that he's just being asked to do too many things, and that this game, if he's just asked to be an outside corner, that actually can help him a little bit?
Well, I think no. I think his best spot has been at when he rotates in at safety. Like, he's played the run really well the last few weeks. Like, I think that is what you're looking for from Chris Harris at this point. I think you leave Chris Harris on an island all game. Like, Nelson Aguilar beat him deep last week. N'Keal Harry beat him on a couple comebacks. So I'm not expecting it like a great Chris Harris game when he's locked up on the outside.
And I mean, also, he wanted out of Denver specifically because he didn't want to play the outside. So that's kind of the thing. I think he'll do it out of necessity, of course, for the team, but I don't think this is something he wants to do.
All right, well, we sort of have a call-out question here. Steven thinks Murray's too small to play edge. He's 4 pounds lighter than Fackrell, and he has 4 more tackles, despite being on IR for 4 weeks. There's a few things off with that. One, he was a linebacker, so he probably has more tackles. Then, like Dave Blue just pointed out, his tackles are 8 yards downfield. There's just kind of some cleanup stuff. So that's not great. And then the weight listed on these websites is way off. I was talking to somebody else who's lost a bunch of weight, and it's completely different than what their weight shows on the team website, on their combine or whatever. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that.
Yeah, and I never said that Murray was too small. I said he wasn't strong enough and couldn't shed tackles well enough. So, I mean, size has nothing to do with it. Like Chris Rumpf probably weighs less than Kenneth Murray too, but Chris Rumpf I would take on the edge over Kenneth Murray because that's what he does. He is an edge rusher. Like I think that everybody tries to make this hypothetical change for Kenneth Murray out to be so simple because Kenneth Murray played outside linebacker in high school, and it's like, okay, well, he's played inside linebacker at Oklahoma and inside linebacker for the Chargers. Like, this isn't just a change that everybody can make. You know, Micah Parsons is the outlier of all outliers at this point of linebackers who try to play on the edge. Like, that's my thing, is that this isn't just a switch A for B and then everything is fixed for Kenneth Murray. So we have a super chat question from Matthew Dahl. Again, this is a Q&A. We obviously had some news to talk about. So if you have questions, please type them in the chat. Matthew Dahl has a super chat. It's concerning that Lombardi is making Herbert be like Drew Brees. Do you think this can't happen this year? So this was obviously brought up by Arjun most recently in his film breakdown that you did with him, Tyler, and then he tweeted about it as well. So why don't you explain a little bit of Arjun's point here and then what you think about Matthew's question?
Give me 2 seconds to pull up exactly what the stat was so I don't butcher what it is. But essentially, Drew Brees led the league in, I think, passer rating or whatever on the quick game from 2016 to 2019. He threw out 2020 because he was injured that year. So obviously Joe Lombardi was there, yada, yada. So PFF has a quick passing game concept sort of charting where it's either 3 steps from under center or 1 step from shotgun. So in the quick passing game, Drew Brees led the league in passer rating or PFF passing grade from 2016 to 2019. Now this year with Justin Herbert, he has the highest number of dropbacks on quick game concepts this year. That's including with a bye, and that's excluding the quick screens to the outside that most of us don't like, that aren't very efficient. But despite the fact that he leads the league in quick passing game dropbacks, he's a 57.9 Pro Football Focus passing grade, and of course Joe Lombardi is his offensive coordinator. So in that sense, they're trying to make him run the same Drew Brees quick passing game concepts. So is it concerning? I think to a certain extent. I think I'd rather see him do a little bit more than the quick passing game early on. I do appreciate it. I do think it's a great way to get players involved early, get them on the move, help out your offensive line, or at least help out your quarterback when the offensive line isn't good. And so when they're running that against the Washington football team, against the Ravens, against the Patriots, that makes sense to me. And I think it's just the quantity and the number of times that they're running it. I would like to see Herbert not lead the league with a bye and not counting those quick screens. I'd like to see him not lead the league in quick passing game dropbacks. That seems a little excessive to me, especially because it seems like the Ravens and the Patriots are starting to pick up on that, and they're getting their hands up at the line of scrimmage and knocking the ball down on first down. And that's contributing to part of the issues on first down. But I do think, especially with the Eagles, considering the defenses are going to start backing off or just not be as talented or just not as aggressive, I think we're going to see that the quick passing game sort of goes away. Although it was a great way for them to involve Mike Williams early on in the season, and I think he was excellent at being that Michael Thomas slant boy sort of type, and it really, really worked. And that's part of the reason why Herbert was an MVP candidate, is because Mike Williams was winning those short game stuff, and Herbert was hitting him, and it was really, really working. But Mike Williams has not been productive recently. Granted, it's only been 2 games against good defenses. So do they go back to the quick passing game, or do they move away from that? I'm really curious to see what they do, because Mike Williams hasn't really been involved recently, and I'd like to see if that changes or if nothing changes at all.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just don't know if at this point making him like Drew Brees and talking about that kind of offense is like what Justin Herbert was good at last year. I think they've tried to make him better at that this year, of course, and there's been some improvement when he has gotten protection. But like the long play EPA thing that we talked about in the offseason, like that stuff wasn't sustainable. But it's also like they're not really taking those shots, even if they are available, like we talked about with Jalen Guyton and some of those other options. So I don't know. I think the offense is what it is this year. I think they'll have games where it's successful, and you play a team like the Eagles, who is not as talented in the secondary as, you know, say the Baltimore Ravens or as well coached as the Patriots. But I think the offensive scheme is pretty baked into what it's going to be this year. I hope it gets better, but I think it'll just be kind of different variations of sort of the same thing this week. So I think you can have games where the Chargers go off for, 30 points and, it's a good week, or they have that 47-point outburst that they did against the Browns, partially because of the Browns injuries, but, also because they generally were just more in sync that game. But I think it's just going to be kind of this clunky through the rest of the year. Like, it's going to take some time to get them to learn it. I'm not personally a big Joe Lombardi believer right now, but look, you play two defenses, I think, the next 2 weeks that are not too great. Like, this is your chance to really kind of gain some momentum in the offense, if there's ever going to be an opportunity, before you go play the Steelers later in the season and you go play some of these other tough teams. So I think the offense is what it is this year, but I hope that it improves and you at least start to get Herbert kind of back on the right track in terms of his processing, and hopefully he's not as barraged on the on the pressures when we talk about Storm Norton and other stuff, because if Storm Norton has a better game, that will allow Justin Herbert to have a better game. It's just a struggle right now.
Yeah. As to the quick passing game, like, I think there's a lot of contributing factors here, right? Like, I think we all agreed that in the offseason, one of the things we wanted to see out of Justin Herbert and out of the offense was to allow him to have opportunities to make his life easier. And I think the quick passing game is one of those ways. I was not expecting him to lead the league in dropbacks in quick passing game at this point, but there's a lot of context that needs to be provided here. Like, this is one of my biggest gripes about the analytical world is like, hey, look, this is the number, and this paints a terrible picture for this person or this coach. It's like, well, this graphic is not telling you that your defense on your same team has the worst rushing defense in the league. It's not telling you that you have a former XFL player at right tackle and a guy who you signed off the street at right guard. So it's a little bit of a concern for me, but I also understand why Lombardi is doing it. Doing a quick passing game keeps Justin Herbert clean. It keeps the offensive line from having to be on an island the entire game. Theoretically, it keeps your offense on the field and your terrible run defense off the field. So it's a concern, but I'm not like panicking about the number of quick passing game plays that they're running, because I understand what the point is. And that's my only thing here. I think, like, this is a criticism of Joe Lombardi that I've had too. Like, I make no mistake about it. I don't think that Justin Herbert should be first in quick passing game dropbacks. I'm just saying, like, I understand the context of why he's doing that, and I understand why Joe Lombardi would be calling those kind of plays.
Yeah, no, I agree. The one stat that I thought was interesting when talking with Arjun is I think a lot of people have been calling for more bootlegs, more rollouts. And I don't know if this stat from PFF is a designed rollout versus like flustered out of the pocket rollout. I don't know if they only talk about designed ones, but I would have thought this year that he's been rolling out less than last year. But I guess he has 11 rollouts this year and only 19 last year in 16 games, which is a little bit surprising to me. So that number completely threw me off. I don't know. Again, I don't know if Arjun only, or Pro Football Focus only, includes intentional ones versus scrambles, because obviously the one against the Saints where he hit Keenan Allen, that's not an intentional rollout, I don't imagine, because two guys were coming off the edge.
Right.
And that was an incredible play, but I don't think it was intentional. So, but I would like to see more of that because I think he can do it.
Yeah, obviously. I would also wonder if they don't count the ones where like Herbert gets sacked or like gets thrown, like he has to throw the ball away, like that play that you showed where Donald Parham was like supposed to leak across the field and block Judon and he didn't. So then Justin Herbert had to like scramble and do so. I'd be curious. I personally feel like the rollouts is the same. Like, to me, the criticisms for Lombardi that I have are that we're not seeing Justin Herbert be used as a runner.
Yes.
And, like, I think that to me is something that should be happening more often, because I think it just opens up so many more opportunities for everybody. It makes the running game, which has been thriving recently, that much more difficult to defend. And then, like, I think, we've got to see Jalen Guyton be used a little bit more. I know people don't like him, but if you're not going to use him as a burner because of the offensive line, like, give him some opportunities in the intermediate range and give him some after the catch ability. So I think those are legitimate criticisms. I think, you want to see the the quick passing game dropbacks come down. I think that's a legitimate criticism. But like Alex was saying, like this offense is going to take some time to develop, and we heard that from Jeff Duncan. Like Jeff Duncan said, it took the Saints about 2 years to figure exactly out what it is. And unfortunately, we all want the offense to be great right now, and I do too. But that doesn't happen everywhere. Brian Daboll took 2.5 years before he became a great offensive coordinator in Buffalo that we all know now. So sometimes things just take time. It takes personnel differences, and so there are definitely legitimate criticisms of Joe Lombardi. I want to be very clear there, but I think the narratives around him has been, very unfair in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I to me, the biggest thing on offense right now, aside from the quick passing game or any of that stuff, is just frankly that they don't look very organized, right? Like we mentioned,
Right.
Donald
Right.
Parham not being there to block for Justin Herbert on Judon. We mentioned Jalen Guyton not being there. We mentioned the illegal shifts earlier in the year. Like if that stuff gets fixed, like then the floor for this offense is much higher than what it is right now. At least that's kind of what I think. So if you take out some of those errors and just everyone knows where they are situationally, even if the play doesn't work out, I think that the offense will just look cleaner as a whole, and probably would be analytically a lot cleaner too. So I think that one of the biggest criticisms of Lombardi that I have is just that, like, right now everybody doesn't seem to be on the same page on offense. And we talked about Justin Herbert and the Keenan Allen, zone thing last week, as for what that was supposed to be, and what people were expecting. Like, I think that's something that both him and Staley sort of have to fix. Just get everyone on the same page. Everyone knows where to line up, and everybody knows what they're doing. If the play doesn't work, whatever. But to me, it's just much more the right process over the right results thing. And right now, the process just doesn't seem like it's there on each play.
Yeah, I think they have a few games coming up where they can really correct some of the issues. I think at the beginning of the season, we saw, okay, what do we need to get fixed? Well, before the season, what do we need to get fixed? Okay, let's take the pressure off of Herbert. Let's get Mike Williams more involved. And I think they did that. But then there were other issues that came up. Penalties, obviously, one of them, and red zone offense. I think the penalties have certainly gone down. I think they were second behind the Eagles. Now I think they're like seventh or something like that. And that means something. And the red zone offense has definitely improved. Fourth down offense has basically been the same, really solid so far. And so now they're kind of transitioning to a new thing where it's okay, we need to get more deep shots, maybe get away from the quick passing game. And I think against the Patriots, at least compared to the Ravens, I feel like there were twice as many deep shots available. So I think they're kind of now focusing on the next thing they have to fix. So eventually everything will come together. I think just right now, that's the criticism, and hopefully it changes. But I believe in them that they're going to change it. They have the personnel, the shots are there, they have the quarterback. Generally, they have the talent. If the right tackle can hold up, I think things will change. I think people could do a complete 180 this week after the Eagles game.
Yeah.
I'll see it when I believe it.
Very fun. Just to wrap this up, as Oscar points out, I think with the way that the rushing attack is working, now you can see Justin Herbert do some more, play action as well. And I think that opens up things deep. So I hope it happens this week. The Eagles don't blitz a whole lot, so theoretically they should have time to do some of that. So thank you, Matthew, for that super chat. I don't think we planned to talk about that for 15 minutes, but we did. So if you guys have any other questions and you want them answered, please use the super chat feature. Otherwise, we'll just kind of scroll through.
One that was kind of a, do we think that maybe Herbert doesn't want design runs for himself? I obviously don't think he wants to be Lamar Jackson, but he's the guy who ran and trucked a Chiefs defender in his first start. So I think he's okay with some design runs for himself. He's certainly not shy from contact. Does he want a bunch of design runs? Not really. Although that one scramble against the Patriots was really, really bad. He had guys that were open. He decided to tuck and run. I don't even really hate that decision. But then he almost pulled a full Mark Sanchez, ran into his center, and then got dropped for -5 on a 2nd and 1. It was bad. So, I don't think he wants a bunch of design runs, but I don't think he's shying away from it either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he wants design runs, but the undesigned runs are what's the problem right now. Like, just that instinct for himself, and when a play isn't available downfield, what he's going to do. Because to me, every time that they have designed a run, it's looked pretty good. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with 6'7" guy who has the body that he does, right? Like, in terms of running the football, he's not John Hurts or Lamar Jackson, but like he can very easily, pick up chunk yards or pick up a first down when he's needed to if they design it properly.
I mean, He doesn't have a Rose Bowl in his house, a Rose Bowl trophy right now if he doesn't run the football against Wisconsin.
True, no kidding.
And
Exactly.
they don't beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship if they don't let him run. So I understand, like, he might not want it, but I think he probably does. Like, I think he looks at that Rose Bowl and thinks it's pretty nice and recognizes that his legs were a big part of that. This is an interesting one from Speedy. I want to talk about this one. Over or under 3 catches for Josh Palmer tomorrow. So we heard the coaching staff praise Josh Palmer this week. We heard Josh Palmer do his press conference, like I mentioned on Thursday. Loved his attitude that he was talking about. Some of the beat writers are saying that they think that this could be kind of Josh Palmer's, coming out party, if you will, in terms of snaps and usage and things like that. So I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts here. Alex, I'll ask you to go first on this one. Over or under 3 catches for Josh Palmer tomorrow.
I'll say under. I'll say 3 or under. I think at the end of the day, you still have to get Mike Williams involved. You still have to get Keenan Allen involved. And if those guys aren't dropping the ball, then, like, to me, that does sort of lead to, like, fewer opportunities for Palmer. I mean, also Palmer's big catch did come in garbage time. So, like, maybe they figure out a way to finally start using him more consistently. But to me, the ball still has to go to Mike Williams if he's on a corner that he can take. And the ball still has to go to Keenan Allen if he's matched up on someone that's not Darius Slay, like Avonte Maddox at some point in the game. So I would say at 3 is probably a decent number. So I'll go slightly under, just because I think if they're going to fix the drop issues, and this is the way to do it, then, like, to me, I don't think you should need Josh Palmer in this one if everybody else is doing their job properly and not dropping the ball.
Yeah, I'm taking the under on this one. Unfortunately, as much as we like Josh Palmer and he looked good, they went through the bye, they evaluated everything, and they gave him 8 snaps. So they clearly want to do something else potentially. And if that was their intention after the bye, I don't see why 1 catch, which is an amazing catch, but I don't see why that 1 catch would change. Like, oh my gosh, you know what? He said he has a really good relationship with Herbert. Now let's play him more snaps and get him more catches. Like, if he's just not on the field, he can't get there. And if they really, really look at the tape from the New England game, it's like, okay, what should we do differently? How can we be better? It's not really about the guys that were on the field. Guyton was open. Williams was open. Cook was open. Eckler was open. Parham was open. Some of these guys were open. It wasn't like, oh, we put Palmer in there and our guys will be more open. No, they were open. It's just Herbert didn't get there or the offensive line didn't hold up. So I don't see, as much as I like him and as amazing as that catch was, I don't see any reason for them to get him on the field and a bunch of targets more just because of that, that 1 catch or the 1 press conference or whatever. I don't imagine them changing their plans so drastically in this game.
That was sad.
What was sad?
That was sad, man. That made me sad.
Sorry. Sorry. Are you okay?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Did I break Steven?
No,
are you okay?
I'm fine. I don't understand the plan with Josh Palmer either. And I think that's a fair point, because it's like he played 28 snaps against Baltimore, but that was because Mike Williams was hurt. And I think he had 3 targets that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, at least
so.
2.
Yeah, I would take the under here as well. I want to see more of him, man. And I was being dramatic, but I want to see more of him.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And then the coaching staff loves him. Herbert loves him. He runs every route as best he freaking can. We also like training camp. You see that against the Ravens. He runs great routes. It's just they don't get him on the field, and because they like their tight ends, which I also kind of get. Although I guess in this game they could get away from more of their tight ends and go to receivers. So I could see. I'm still taking the under.
Yeah, from a betting standpoint, it's the under. Like, that's the smart thing. But I really like, that's another criticism of Joe Lombardi, if you want to get there, is the overusage of the 12 personnel and how often Jared Cook has been on the field. Like, Jared Cook being on pace for 700 snaps this year is kind of ridiculous. We've seen that come down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but I really want to see them, go to more 4 receiver sets and kind of open things up a little bit. So we have a super chat question from Jay Blue. He wants to know, if the Chargers lose this game, is it officially time to hit the panic button on the Chargers season? I think I've been very cautious, but I think if they lose this game against the Eagles, I would be getting closer to that point. I'm not like full panic button, but I would be very close to hitting that button if they lose on Sunday tomorrow.
I think it depends on how they lose. I guess I mean, any loss to the Eagles is bad, but if they look like the same offense that we saw against New England and Baltimore against the defense that's ultimately much less talented, then like that is a full ring the alarm on every floor of the hotel. Like it's a pretty bad spot. If they at least look really competitive on offense and it turns into some shootout game, we can at least probably run with Michael Davis is coming back, Asante Samuel is coming back, even though the defense didn't look good, and they're down a lot of bodies in the secondary, right? So you could very much lose this game because of your defense. Like, I know that's not what people want to hear, but that's possible. So if the offense at least looks good this game, right, and gets back on track to the team they were, in the Raiders game, the Chiefs game, etc., then I think that, the panic is less there, even if they lose to the Eagles because of their defense. If they're losing because of their offense, though, that's a problem. There's no way around it. And because, look, the Vikings and the Steelers are coming in here. Steelers have looked much better offensively than when they started the season. The Vikings, they have Justin Jefferson, and I know their record isn't very good, but they've been able to keep up with teams in these games and nearly beat the Cardinals in a shootout, so that's a game where your offense has to be really good. So to me, that's really what I'm looking at is how do they look like they're playing? Because to me, you can very easily construct a panic time narrative if they lose to a team like the Eagles. But if they at least look better on offense and are getting bodies back on defense, you can at least say that they're pointing in the right direction. Obviously 4-4 with 3 straight losses is kind of panic time.
Yeah, and people will go back to the narrative of, they're 4-3 or they're 4-2, not bad. Oh, they're 4-3, not bad. Oh, they're 4-4, that's not bad at this point. But considering the trajectory of where they are and not just the record that they have, I would say panic. Not because even if the offense looks good, but if the defense looks bad and that's why they lose, I would say panic because this is the team that you should be, and everything only gets harder from here. The Vikings are a better team, I think. The Steelers would probably beat the Eagles. Roethlisberger's a giant wild card. But that team is improving. The Bengals, I think, are a good team. I don't know. So some of these teams, if they can't beat the Eagles, why would I pick them to beat the Bengals or the Steelers, really? Yes, I know their secondary is depleted, and there's something to that. If they give up 30 points because the Eagles were able to pass, I kind of get it. I wouldn't really panic about the secondary, but I don't know, this would be a panic one for me. It's not full-blown panic, fire everyone. Because I would understand some of the reasons that they would lose. But then again, you go back to, why are they losing? Is it the right tackle? Is it the edge rusher you didn't address? Is it the things you could have traded for that you didn't? That would cause me to panic a little bit more. Not necessarily panic, but turn on some decision makers because you could have avoided it, but here you are.
Yeah, I think losing to the Eagles in a vacuum is fine, right? You're going to the East Coast, you don't have your corners. It's just the 3 straight losses. I did not think that this would be something that would happen this year for this team based off of A, the talent, and B, the coaching staff presumably, being willing to fix issues on the fly. We've seen some of that in glimpses, right? Like Tyler was talking about the penalties, the red zone issues, the run defense is getting better. So to me, it would be more of a product of losing 3 straight as just losing to the Eagles.
Yeah, we're on the border between must-win game for the season and must-win game for the YouTube algorithm. So we're writing that fine line right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Philip Casey wants to know if any of us are pumped for the UFC card. I have never watched UFC fights, and I never plan to.
Wow. Okay.
That's I'm not into UFC or boxing or any of it.
I just have work, so I'm not going to be watching it. I don't usually watch it unless it's a big fight. I was more into the UFC with Anderson Silva and those guys. That's kind of when I was watching. These days, I don't really watch it anymore. I'm all old and crusty or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I look like a UFC fan, so you can take that as your answer.
Did you guys hear who's going to be boxing on what's his name, the Paul brothers card?
Isn't it Darren Williams versus
Yeah.
Frank Gore?
Yeah,
So
Darren Williams
fucking
versus Frank Gore.
Frank Gore's going to go for all 27 rounds, man. He's going to last the entire 27 rounds.
Yeah. Oh man.
Uh,
I did not expect to hear Darren Williams' name come back into relevance yesterday, but everybody thinks they can be a boxer now, apparently.
The slow death of the sport of boxing.
Yeah. We have a super chat from LA Chargers fan. Thank you for that. He wants to know the way the team has looked for the past couple of weeks makes the second half of the season look tougher. I would agree with that too.
Mhm.
And I think, we kind of fell for this narrative of like the strength of schedule isn't, very good in comparison to, the first 6 games. And I still think that there's some truth to that. But like Tyler is saying and Alex is saying, the Vikings are a tougher game than I think people realize, especially with the way the defense has been playing. You have Dalvin Cook, you have Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen. As much as I hate Kirk Cousins, actually I don't hate Kirk Cousins. I don't like Kirk Cousins. He's a solid quarterback, just very overpaid. But that offense is very good. And so there's, it stands within reason that the Chargers be in a tough game there. The Steelers are very tough. I think I was worried about that game, even with the Steelers' offensive issues. Now their offense is kind of finding their groove, and you still have J.J. Watt and company on that side of the ball. So the Bengals are better than I thought. So I don't think wouldn't call the second half of the season like tough, but I think it's tougher than we first thought based on how some of these teams are playing.
Yeah, for me, it's just like, I think if you look at the first 6 games, like that is harder than what they'll have to play in the second half in terms of just, Chiefs, Raiders, Ravens, Browns. Like to me, that is the gauntlet, plus the Cowboys in week 2 as well. But yeah, I think it's much more the way the team is playing. Like, yeah, the Bengals are better. Yeah, the Vikings are better than we thought. But like, so you could say that for the Steelers too. But, it's all about how the team has looked in the last 2 weeks on offense. If that looks better, then I'm not concerned about the second half difficulty of the schedule. Yeah. If it doesn't, then panic button like the last question.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, based on the way they've played, this Eagles game worries me more. Me more. And based on where they played, the Vikings game definitely worries me more. And the run defense, like I thought it wasn't going to be good heading into the season. We're headed for historically bad. So that's worse. I picked them to lose 3 games after the bye. They've lost 1, so they can still drop 2 and be about my expectation.
Yeah.
The good news is the Broncos are sellers, and they still have to play them twice. I think that team is looking for a quarterback, even though Fields was on the board. But anyway, they're looking for a quarterback in this draft. They're loading up on picks to try to take whatever the hell is in this class. Good luck. But then the Bengals are better than I expected. The Steelers were to start the year. Well, they beat the Bills, but they were in it. They lost the Raiders, didn't look good, and they're finding their groove. The Bengals, I think, are something. They're possibly finding their groove. So while I think, but the Raiders, I got to bring it up. What was the only reason the Chargers almost lost that game against them? It was Henry Ruggs and those deep shots. He's obviously unavailable, so I feel better about that game. Sorry for bringing that up, any Raiders fans that are watching. And the Chiefs, I think, are going to get it together. So it really depends on their opponents. I think the Chargers will get better over the next couple of games on offense, but like the Steelers, Bengals, Chiefs, I'm more worried about. Then on the flip side, at Denver is less scary to me, and I do think they can take that final game against the Raiders, which I predicted them to, but now it's like, well, now you have no Ruggs, and so I think they can pull it off.
Yeah, so I would agree with that, and like if we get the offense from the Chiefs and the Raiders game, and even obviously the Browns game, then I'm not very concerned about it at all. Like I think the Chargers would still be able to reach expectations and get to 11 wins. But the offense is in a bad spot right now. And I think they'll bounce back. Like I think this is a good game for them to bounce back, like I said on Thursday. But we need to see it first. Alex, I don't know if you saw this. Jay Blue said you look like a hockey fan, a roller hockey fan.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism. I only watch I'm a tennis fan, so that's what I look like. Tennis is worse than roller hockey, probably in the toughness category. So yeah, not a big UFC boxing guy. I'll watch when I don't know, any of the big names fight though. Conor McGregor, is he still around? Maybe not.
He was at one of the Chargers games. Did you know that?
Yes.
Well, no, I didn't see that. I only saw a couple of years ago when he was at the Cowboys game and he threw the ball to Jerry Jones or whatever, and it just looked terrible coming out of his hands. I remember that. But
or the first pitch.
Oh God. So great with their legs, not so great with their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean O'Brien, thank you for the super chat. He says Herbert appreciation, pro-vax, and anti-TikTok. I hate TikTok. TikTok is awful.
Anti-Jackson Mahomes TikTok. I can't stand. Like, even at this point, I feel bad for Patrick Mahomes. And that says a lot.
Yeah, I have family members that try to get me to download TikTok because they want to send funny things to me. It's like, no, I already see enough bad TikToks on other social media platforms, so I'll pass.
I know, and it's like I don't need to download TikTok. Like you can just send me the video and I can still watch it. Like,
yeah, I can watch the video without the Chinese spyware on my phone. Thanks.
Hey, that's good. you accept that Chinese spyware. My family's got to make money. Okay.
I'm sorry. Prayers to Chi.
Jarrett Holyby wants to know about the Eagles pass rush compared to our offensive line. Do you think Herbert will have time to throw? The good news here is that the Eagles do not blitz. They're like Gus Bradley levels in terms of blitzing. So that is the good thing, right? Like they're not very exotic in their pressure simulations or blitz packages. But I think they have some talent on the defensive line. Obviously, you have Fletcher Cox, who everybody is familiar with at this point. You have Javon Hargrave, who's having a career season. I think he's last time I checked, he was like 5th in pressures from among defensive tackles. So he's fallen off a little bit recently, but he's still very much a threat there. You have Josh Sweat on the outside, who probably is their best edge rusher. He's been solid, not like great, but I think he's a very solid pass rusher. And then Alex can kind of speak on the other guys. Those are the big 3 that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett occasionally. Like those guys are the problem. I think the underrated guys to sort of watch in this one would be Ryan Kerrigan at defensive end if he can give problems to someone like Storm Norton.
He was there.
Yeah, if he can give problems to someone like Storm Norton, like as much as we say Josh Sweat's not great, like I could see him giving problems to Storm Norton too, based on how he's been playing the last few weeks. Like Matthew Judon was not supposed to have 8 pressures last week. So that is what it is. I think the name to watch for me though is Milton Williams. He's played really well in the last couple weeks. So for me, in terms of like an interior option, aside from Cox and Hargrave, I think he's somebody that could maybe give someone like Michael Schofield problems potentially on the inside. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think they can get after Herbert, and it's less about what the Eagles do and more about the fact that Storm Norton's on the team and he has to start. So like to me, that's what it's all about. Like I think the Eagles can get sufficient pressure and they have a decent defensive line, but it's all about how Storm Norton performs. If Storm Norton performs well, then I think you can generally say that the Chargers will have an okay time this game, aside from a few interior pass rushes that get to Herbert. But if he doesn't, then, the floodgate's kind of open.
Yeah, so I think the Chargers are still a top 10 team in pass blocking efficiency for their line. But then that right tackle gives up 71 pressures this year. It's amazing that other guys are so good, and then one guy is just completely awful. So the Eagles can obviously get to Herbert because the right side is pretty bad. Schofield did not look good. I think, Steven, you liked Schofield less in that Patriots game than Pro Football Focus had him. I think you gave him 2 pressures and took 2 away from Norton. Yeah, so go for it.
Well, I was going to say, so Pro Football Focus had Storm at 8 pressures and Schofield at 3. I gave 2 pressures to Schofield, so I had it at 6 and 5. There were a few times where the Patriots were running a stunt, and I could see why Pro Football Focus would give the pressure to Norton. But to me, the bigger problem was Schofield, who just wasn't getting over in more situations. So, like, I've made my piece like about the offensive line. I think that they should move the pieces around, and I can understand why they are kind of waiting for Schofield and Norton to like improve their chemistry and improve their communication. But I just think it's such a liability to have 2 players who are in that similar, like average at best kind of range next to each other. So I thought Michael Schofield had a really good day in the run blocking area. I thought he was really fantastic in that and has been much better than I remember him being from his previous tenure with the Chargers. But the communication on that side is not great. And the technique in terms of, one-on-one situations isn't great either. 11 pressures on the right side it's awful.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
I was just gonna say, like, I think it would be a different story if like Storm Norton had started, the preseason and training camp, and Brian Bulaga wasn't a thing on this team, right? Like, I think there would be better chemistry, but like, you kind of don't have time at this point. Like, there's 9 games left, and at this point, it's either gonna develop or it won't. So, I think at some point, like, it's gonna, we'll see what happens with Bulaga. Don't hold my breath on that, but. It's either going to be they're going to bottom out so bad that they have to replace it and try Jaimez and try other things, or it works well enough to get by. That's just kind of where it is. So, I like Steven said, I think it's probably time to shift things around, but it was also probably time to shift things around prior to the bye week, and they didn't do that. So.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous of the Eagles pass rushers that they drafted this year, at least with Teron Jackson and Milton Williams. Not that Williams is technically a pass rusher, but wanted the Chargers to get some more depth, and they, those two guys. I think was Jackson a 7th round pick or undrafted free agent. Milton Williams was what, a 3rd round pick. Those
Williams
guys have 8 pressures and 2 sacks.
Yeah.
3rd.
Williams was 3rd.
So those guys have 8 pressures
Jackson
and 2 sacks.
5th or 6th. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like Jackson was one of my sleepers. I think Williams was actually a guy that I was technically lower on than everyone, but that's because everyone was like, "Oh, 2nd round." I said, "No, hell no," but I did like him quite a bit. Anyway, those guys have 8 pressures, 2 sacks. Chris Rumpf has 1 so far, so hopefully Chris Rumpf can step up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as T. Billy Go points out, Popper also pointed out in his mailbag this week that he also understands why they're skeptical of moving Filer over, because him and Slater and Lindsey are playing so well together on that side. So if you haven't watched the all-in that the Chargers did yesterday, I thought it was fantastic. Really kind of painted that picture very well. There wasn't a whole lot of mention of Storm Norton and Michael Schofield, but the other 3 members of the Chargers offensive line are playing fantastic. And, like I said, I can understand why they are not wanting to move those players around. It's just like at this point, I think you kind of have to try something different for the sake of Justin Herbert. Like I get that.
Right.
You have Slater and Filer playing really well next to each other, but I think Justin Herbert's safety kind of is more important at this point.
I can fully understand why Storm Norton and Michael Schofield were left out of the Chargers propaganda show.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to Frank Smith too. I don't know if you guys watched it, but it really seems like these players are really buying into what Frank Smith is teaching them and coaching them. Corey Linsley was talking about him and it just had a huge smile on his face. So I have to give a big shout out to Frank Smith. I know I personally was kind of concerned about that hire because he hadn't coached offensive line specifically in a few years. But so far that looks pretty good.
Yeah, and he's their run game coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
And that run game is a lot better than last year for sure.
Yeah. So that run game is cruising right now. Let's see. Will Brian Bulaga even play another game as a Charger? At this point, I doubt it. I don't think he's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a different thing if he didn't have specifically a back procedure, but that he's also going to be a free agent next year after he gets cut. Don't think there's any chance.
Yeah, because they can save, I think it's $8 million by cutting Brian Bulaga next year. Is that right?
It's a lot of money.
It's a good amount. It's enough to be like, yep, cut him.
I think it's like 11 million base salary and then 3 dead cap if they cut him. So it's like 7 or 8.
Yeah, so he has a cap hit for 14 million, dead hit for 3 million. So they'll save
it's 11 million.
They'll save $11 million by cutting Brian Bulaga. So
he's not
Brian.
No.
So, but at least he brought us Corey Linsley, man. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Tron forward for $10. Rightfully focus on Herbert, but is there anything we can do defensively to help Derwin? Felt like we couldn't get a positive play without him doing someone else's job. Yeah, that's sort of the problem. Is talent on defense. And like I mentioned with the Dallas Goedert thing, we saw Derwin James and Michael Davis sort of split work on tight ends before. Can't do that this week because Michael Davis is out, and Derwin also has to do a lot of other people's jobs, unfortunately, because they're not doing them super well. So the things that you can do to help Derwin are like get everybody back healthy and going. And that's, I don't know what's going to happen there. I think the best thing you could probably do to help Derwin is better defensive line performance. But in the secondary, it's probably going to be him or nothing tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything you can do defensively to help Derwin other than play better around him? Not really. Like, he's just does different jobs. He's excellent at them. He's going to be an all-pro this year if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, not really anything you can do to help him. If you want to rush the passer better and cause more interceptions to be thrown, some more dumb balls, tip a pass so he can pick it off, that maybe. But otherwise, not really, because he's just everywhere doing different things. So it's not like one particular thing. He's not like just a corner, and so you need to help him by rushing the passer better. There's so many things he does. It's not like there's one thing you can do to help him. He's doing everything he possibly can.
Yeah, I'm a little iffy on this question because I think we've seen Nasir Adderley take a big step forward in his play this year. We've seen Kaiser White play better this year. To me, the defensive player who needs help is Joey Bosa. Like I think Derwin James, like in terms of helping him, like it would help him probably to not have such a big responsibility in terms of the rush defense. Like it would be great if, the defensive tackles could do their jobs better. But I don't know if I would necessarily be like, oh, Derwin needs help. Joey Bosa needs help. Like Joey Bosa needs team players around him to step up. He needs the coaches to, scheme up one-on-ones better for him. So I'm more on helping the Joey Bosa side versus Derwin needing help.
I think I'm pro helping both of them because Derwin plays.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that one.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, the defensive line is more the struggle, and Bosa needs help there. But I mean, Derwin plays at all three levels, so he's affected by the bad defensive line play and affected by the ins and outs that they have had of linebackers the last few weeks. Kenneth Murray getting hurt, then Drew Tranquil getting hurt, and those guys coming back. So like, he's been affected by that, and now he's affected by the secondary just being a complete mess this week. Like, I mean, you're gonna have, Chris Harris and maybe Keandre Thomas as your starting corners.
Sure,
it's pretty bad. Yeah. So, like, I think Nas can help him. I think other players can help him, but like to me, as much as Bosa needs to be helped, and I totally agree there. Like, Derwin's kind of holding this defense together, like, I don't know. It's like that scene in Spider-Man 2 where, Tobey Maguire is trying to hold the buildings together with his webs as the train is careening off. Like, that's what Derwin James is trying to do right now.
Yeah.
That's Derwin James on this defense right now. Thanks for the demonstration, Tyler.
Someone edited that for us. I appreciate it.
Someone screenshot that later. Yeah, I definitely agree there. Like, they both need help, but I think Joey Bosa needs more help at this point. So people are talking about Justin. Yeah, thank you, Mama Shun. So people are talking about Justin Herbert right now, and
yes, let's talk about it.
So Jason, our friend Jason Valier from who used to be on this show, he pointed out that to me that Justin Herbert is still on pace for 4,800 yards and 38 touchdowns passing. Which I think if we had headed into the season, we all knew that was going to be the case, we would be thrilled. And someone mentioned specifically like the middle of the field. And Herbert said something really interesting yesterday about that, where he said that Pep Hamilton had been coaching him that if you're throwing late over the middle of the field, it's better to just like basically not do that. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting thing to me. And I think kind of explains why the offense doesn't use the middle of the field too much, is because Herbert has been coached to, if the middle of the field is not open instantly, then we're not throwing there. So I think that's an interesting point that was brought up yesterday by Herbert about his coaching from other coaches.
Interesting that you would say that, because I believe Herbert's now, not that it's all his fault, I think 3 of his interceptions are over the middle of the field and deep. So even if he's firing that way, I think his worst passer rating on Pro Football Focus or whatever it is deep middle. So it's not like, it's not a great option for him right now. I don't like people. Okay. Any of you worried that Lombardi actually limit and make Herbert regress? No. Okay. I think people are really just looking for someone to blame. And I get why Lombardi would be one of them. And I do think there's something to that. Arjun brought up a great point about the quick passing game and it being too much a quick passing game for him. But, okay. We don't like the quick passing game anymore. Nobody likes the quick passing game anymore. But why did Mike Williams start the season off so well? It's because they were doing the quick passing game to him. And it was beautiful. Everyone, oh my God, let's pay him. All pro, best receiver in the league. Why? Was it the deep passes? No, not really. They were there. They were there against the Browns, thanks to broken coverage. But at the beginning of the year, against the Chiefs, right? Against the Washington football team, quick passes. Against the Dallas Cowboys, why did he score that touchdown? It was a quick pass. So I think people were like, oh, let's get rid of the quick passes. I think it was an overreaction because I was actually working to start the year. And then, talking about Herbert regressing, who's making Herbert regress right now? Obviously the right tackle, right guard, but Herbert's kind of regressing right now. I think people aren't really acknowledging that Herbert is also the last two games just not played well. And that's okay. They're tough defenses, confusing defenses, very good defenses, and you got a bad right tackle, right guard situation. But Herbert's also not played well. And I think it's very interesting to see people go, oh, we can't blame Herbert for any of this. We can't blame Herbert for any of this. And then his hand injury comes out and people go, oh, that explains it. Like, well, wait a minute. then he was doing something that was off. And maybe it is his hand, but that's him. Like, he is throwing. Yeah. And so if he's off and it's because of his hand, yeah, it's him. And I think if he's healthy, he can fix that. But you can't just say that he didn't do anything wrong, but then, oh, his hand explains what's going on. Like, no. Then he is doing something. Herbert's missing things. The right tackle situation is awful. Right guard's awful. I know people are worried about Lombardi, but he came out of the bye, and I think he had a really good plan. Overall, I think, against the Patriots, I think it worked. Their rushing game was really, really good coming out of the bye. Obviously, they ran it differently and outside on first down more than they were all season, which really worked. Even on second down, we had the two big second down runs, 75-yard run, 28-yard run. Those are great, sort of going to the outside. So people worried about, making Herbert regress. No, it's a combination of things. I just would like to see him maybe cater it more to Justin Herbert, but he's not like making Herbert regress because that quick passing game was so vital to this offense to start the year when everyone was cheering and celebrating Mike Williams as a new evolved route runner. This is because they were using the quick passing game. And why was Herbert an MVP? Because they were using that. So I think it could be catered differently. I think there's room to grow. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, Lombardi's making Herbert regress. I think that's just too simple. And to me, that tells me you're not watching the things that are on film.
Yeah, my opinion is that it's everyone's fault. You're like, if you're
pretty much
talk, yeah, it is. Like, look, you can blame Lombardi, you can blame Herbert, you can blame Guyton and Parham for not being lined up in the right spot. You can go through all those things, but like at this point, it's just disorganization of the whole offense. Like, I think Herbert, you could say the Lombardi scheme hasn't been able to, in the recent weeks, hasn't been able to get guys quite as open, and that's making Herbert struggle. And then the other things and guys not communicating is also making Herbert struggle, right? When we talk about the Herbert to Jared Cook pass that was wild, that resulted in the pick six and other stuff. So to me, it's it's everything. I think if you want to blame one thing, and people that love Herbert are never going to blame Herbert, people that love Lombardi are never going to blame Lombardi. Like that's just how it is on Twitter. But like, if you're actually watching the offense and you're watching the games, like it's everyone's fault at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've also got to be careful with like the teams that are adjusting to Justin Herbert, because the last two teams that the Chargers have played have taken two very different approaches to playing Justin Herbert. The Ravens, they were basically putting every free defender that wasn't in man coverage at the line of scrimmage and making Herbert guess, and Corey Lindsey making them guess who was coming and who was not. They were not playing deep, like they were playing cover zero essentially the entire game. The Patriots were doing the opposite. They were playing cover two. They were playing the same kind of defense that the Chargers play, and wanting to put a roof over the top of the offense. So the defenses are not really adjusting. They're not making things more difficult, in my opinion, in terms of the passing attack. What they're making more difficult is the pressures, and letting Justin Herbert feel that pressure, which he has taken a step back this year, which of course he was going to. He was the best quarterback under pressure last year. That was not sustainable. I think right now, his passer rating under pressure is like 10th best, if I'm not mistaken. The problem is, like Alex is saying, is everyone, and Alex didn't even talk about the drops. Like we have three receivers. Oh,
I forgot to mention the fifth thing on the litany of problems on the offense. Sorry, right. I'm still recovering from like the last 8 podcasts we've been doing in the last 2 weeks mentally.
So it's a lot of different things. Like I don't think that we can say that Joe Lombardi is making Herbert regress. Like I think Herbert is growing in certain areas, right? Like this, of course he was going to. Like he is significantly better in a clean pocket this year than he was last year, because of course a quarterback is going to get better. So, there are issues with this team, but I am not ready to say that Justin Herbert is regressing. They just have been in a bad spot the last 2 weeks.
This one's from Jay Blue with Super Chat. How frustrating is it that Tom Telesco refuses to make trades because he believes in building through the draft, but he can't draft rounds 2 through 4 for the most part? Don't know about that. I mean, he did just take Asante Samuel, so there's that. But he'll trade up in the draft for not a vet. So I guess this is sort of an overall trade deadline question. But I would start by saying, I don't think that not trading is the problem. I know a lot of people wanted, the Chargers to make big moves and go grab Akeem Hicks and go grab this player, but that's not solving much right now. I think Akeem Hicks would help on the defensive line, but Odell Beckham Jr. is not helping this offense right now. If you guys wanted to trade for him prior to his release, Deshaun Jackson not helping this offense right now. So to me, I don't think that they're not being aggressive enough. People want to talk about the Von Miller trade. Von Miller was never available to them. And everybody should know that. I don't get what we're talking about here. Now, if you want to criticize Tom Telesco's drafting, which we've done plenty of times on this show, that's the place to do it. But in terms of the theory behind it, no. I think having guys on 3 and 4 year contracts that are dirt cheap and getting value for them is good. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build through the draft. So, not that I wouldn't want to trade to make the team better, but people keep acting like there was this generational piece that Tom Telesco passed up on the trade deadline last week. Yeah, I'd prefer a tackle here or there, but there's no one who's fixing the offense right now that was available at the trade deadline. That's just a fact.
You protect your most valuable asset. And there was nothing. There really was nothing. No right tackle or left guard available to protect your most valuable asset.
Well, but that's the thing. To me, that's more about the coaching staff not wanting to change it. That's about.
I'm with Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? If Brandon Staley walked to Tom Telesco's offenses and said, "Hey, I don't want this Storm Norton guy on the field anymore," I think Tom Telesco would do something, whether that's, bringing in some kind of free agent, whether that's they just shift the line around. But if they still believe in putting Storm Norton out there on the field, then there's not there's not multiple right tackle spots that you can put, except for, whenever Trey Pipkins used to come in, whenever they had an extra lineman on the field. So I don't know, there's nothing they can really do there if the coaching staff, at least, they don't believe right now that Storm Norton's the problem. So I don't know.
I'm with Alex on the offensive line, and that's what I said on Thursday. I think, to me, the frustrating part is the coaching staff not shuffling things.
Yeah.
The frustration for Tom Telesco was I thought that there were pass rushers available, and I think that to me is the more frustrating trade deadline thing. And I know everybody hates Tom Telesco, and I certainly wish he would be a little bit more aggressive, but everybody talks about him like he's the worst GM in the league, and I promise you, there are at least 15 GMs in this league that are worse than Tom Telesco.
I think everyone who is a fan of a team hates their GM. At least a solid 60% of the time. If he doesn't do a move that you don't like, then you hate your GM.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's just where we are. I think Tom Telesco is average to above average GM who hits and misses. The draft is a complete crapshoot all the time, and he just landed Rashawn Slater and Asante Samuel. So I think there's valid criticisms of Tom Telesco, to steal Steven's line about Joe Lombardi. But, at the same time, I don't think that, there's anything he could have done in season to save this team. That's just kind of my opinion.
Yeah. And I asked Giants fans if they'd rather have David Gettleman right now or Tom Telesco.
Credit to Dave Gettleman, though. He won the OBJ trade. Out of all the things that have happened, he kind of won it. And then he he got Dexter Lawrence, but he's been bad ever since then.
True. Tom Telesco has hit or misses, and we can all talk about those players that Jay Blue mentioned. Please go look at the Chiefs drafts. Please go look at the Chiefs drafts and talk to me about how easy it is to draft good players. It's just, I think people kind of underestimate how difficult it is.
It's also it's a development thing too. You could talk about all the bad players they've taken, but all the bad players they've taken weren't just bad players. Some of them weren't developed because they've had poor coaching
Yeah.
staffs. Like people didn't, fully believe in Mike McCoy after the second year. Anthony Lynn, I think, had his good years here, but fell off towards the end when it came to player development. And this is the first year of Staley where they're trying to jumpstart all of the, analytical player development things that they're doing and trying to get the best out of every player. So, at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, some of these haven't panned out, which I completely agree with. Some of that's on Telesco. But at the same time, you have to have the development from the coaching staff too. So that's, again, another thing where we talk about the offense. It's on Lombardi, it's on Herbert. It's like, the lack of player development and, player acquisition, whatever it might be, in terms of talent, like that's on Telesco, but it's also on, the three coaching administrations that have passed in Telesco's time, as well as, just some of the players they have, not putting together very good effort sometimes.
Yeah, I think you can look at Nasir Adderley and Kaiser White, who I mentioned earlier. And does Tom Telesco get credit for those picks? Not really. It's more their
only the bad
development.
ones.
It's more, yeah, it's more of their own development. It's more of the coaches using them in the right way. Like, so to me, it goes hand in hand. And obviously, I know the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, you guys. I'm not a fucking moron. But what I'm saying is that being a general manager is a lot. There are a lot of different things that going into being a general manager. And I don't think Brett Veach exactly gets a ton of credit for winning the Super Bowl. I think that's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes who get credit for that.
Yeah, and like as milquetoast as I am on Tom Telesco, like he's fine. Like, I mean, give him credit. He drafted Justin Herbert and has opened this 10-year window for the Chargers. Yeah. I didn't like Justin Herbert before the draft, and I'm very open about that. I give him a B- draft grade, and I was like, I don't know, we'll see. So, like, a lot of people didn't like Justin Herbert before the draft. Go back to that original Chargers draft tweet. So on some level, it's just like, yeah, Tom Telesco is just going to get all the shit for the unpopular stuff he does. And, the things that worked out, he probably won't get as much credit for. So, I'm not the biggest Tom Telesco fan, but at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I'm a little curious to see how he looks as a GM with this new coaching staff and this new coach, because although Gilman looks like what the hell, but he had a complete 180 where he was a special teams downhill run stopper, maybe. Now he's actually like, I feel comfortable with him back there if Derwin James wants to play up. So I think this coaching staff can get more out of what was there, except for Kenneth Murray. I really don't know what happened.
Well, I was just going to say Kenneth Murray, but it's just like they're also going through and shuffling to try to get their own personnel, right? And figuring out where Kenneth Murray is, whether that's at edge or linebacker, like that's part of that. They spent all that capital for him to be a Gus Bradley linebacker, and now he has to be a Brandon Staley player, whether that's an edge or a linebacker. We'll see, but that's part of it.
Yeah, I think Tom Telesco has proven over time that he is willing to collaborate with these coaches. Like Anthony Lynn and company, they wanted Kenneth Murray, they wanted Josh Kelly, and so Tom Telesco gave them. So I think if Brandon Staley wants to be aggressive and make a trade in the future, then Tom Telesco will do it. I think that's kind of where that relationship is at. And I think if Brandon Staley had thought that Akeem Hicks would solve things, then they probably would have been more aggressive on that front. But then again, you never know if the Bears are actually willing to trade people. Again, I think the media really overhypes the NFL trade deadline because, I mean, that's their job, right? But, like we heard 17 different names who were all traded. We didn't hear a peep about Von Miller being traded, and then boom, Von Miller is traded. So I think all of us fall for the media hype, and that is myself included. But the trade deadline is widely kind of boring in the NFL. So that's just kind of where that is at too.
You don't hear a peep about Von Miller traded, except the guy who predicted it 3 weeks before it happened. So I confirmed Ian Rappaport newsbreaker here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Tom Telesco is fine. All right. I think that is a good place to stop for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Alex, Tyler, any final thoughts here today?
Nope. Looks like we're getting into the whole Chargers are cheap sort of thing. So that's a great place to wrap things up. So nope, nothing from me.
Apparently, we missed the time when Corey Linsley became the highest paid center in the league. Alex, final thoughts.
Fuck the Eagles. We should beat them tomorrow. Please, I need a win so bad. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm gonna do on the show tomorrow. So just please beat the Eagles.
Yeah, this is a tough spot for Alex because Alex is wanting the Eagles to be tanking. So
yeah,
and
you need them to tank. All right, look, I'm calling for Tom Telesco's head if he loses to the Eagles and costs them a top 5. It's gonna be a problem. So yeah, I don't know. You just please beat the Eagles, and then we can get on the show and at least start talking about optimistic things from the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be going live tomorrow at some point whenever the Chargers game is over. We'll keep you guys posted on Twitter. As always, leave us a rating or a review if you're listening to the audio version of this. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We always appreciate the feedback there as well. And bolt up. We'll see you tomorrow.